Cheers and welcome to the Naked Wine Podcast, episode number 8.
Episode 8. Welcome, everybody, listeners, viewers. We have an amazing guest today with us, a dear friend of mine, Allie Balin. Hi, Allie.
Hi.
You got
Hey, Allie.
sip on?
Cheers.
Woo!
Let's do a quick cheers, everybody. Virtual cheers. I'm sure this is not our first time.
Love that.
Nice. Well, I'll let Miss or Allie take it away. I mean, you guys there's a lot of history between the two of you guys, but I'm super stoked to have you on. And you got a super cool new venture coming up amongst a million things. So let's hear about it. Let's hear about Allie.
Yeah, Allie, why don't you just start kind of letting us and the listeners know how you got into the wine world and what you're up to today.
Sure. So initially I really didn't like wine very much. I mean, I drank it, but it was more like, you drank it fast to get drunk, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I would just like take what my parents had from their cellar. Luckily they had some good stuff. But I was really into beer initially, and I moved to New York. I got my master's at NYU in world history. My focus was in food studies. And while I was there, I worked at a bunch of different restaurants, mostly beer-oriented restaurants. So I got really into that. And then I moved to Nashville to open up my own restaurant. And in the process of doing that, got like super into wine. I started working at a restaurant while I was opening my own restaurant that was really wine-oriented, and they offered classes. And a friend of mine, we decided that we were going to take the level 1 sommelier exam.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
so we did, and it was interesting. I didn't know anything, so I learned a lot from that.
And when was this? This was like you took WSET 1 in Nashville?
Yeah, I did that in Nashville. We drove to Birmingham, or not Birmingham, Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas,
Okay.
to take the test, which was cool. It was like the level 1 test is great because it's really just a class. You taste a lot of things and you listen to like master somms teach you about all this really great wine stuff. And so, yeah, so I did that. I passed, luckily. Yeah, I know, it was nerve-wracking for sure. And then I decided, because I was opening my own restaurant, that I was just going to keep on going and take the level 2 and learn as much as I could about wine. And so luckily, while I was sourcing for my restaurant, I was doing tastings with distributors. And so I was able to like taste so many wines before my level 2 exam, which was great because there's a tasting part of it and it's hard. And like the thing you can do is just like taste as many wines as you possibly can. Yeah, it was cool.
That's amazing. That's like my dream, to have distributors be coming to me with their portfolios and tasting through them on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And like got a little too drunk sometimes, and
Happens.
but it was fun, and that really helped me with the level 2 exam, which I did in Louisville, Kentucky. And
Cool.
That's exponentially harder than the level 1, like exponentially harder. And then the level 3 is exponentially harder than that, and so on, but so yeah, then I owned a restaurant in Nashville, and through the restaurant I tasted a ton of wines. I developed, the whole beverage list. I had a bar manager who did the cocktails, but I did all the beer and wine, and just got to try like the coolest wines and kind of further honed in on the like direction of my palate, which was definitely more like low intervention wines, lighter wines with more nuance, wines that go really nicely with food. And
And maybe jumping ahead of myself here, but why originally do you think you like It's not like you're like, oh, natural wine, I only want to drink natural wine. But you said your palate was kind of like starting to form that way. Was it just because it like paired much nicer with food, you thought?
Well, okay, so first off, I studied food studies, so I learned a lot about industrial farming and like the detriment of pesticides, and that's also something, and just like crazy farming practices, and that's something that also applies in the wine industry too. I mean, people. So, for me, I was always cognizant of that, and then just from these tastings, like I would try kind of more off the beaten path varietals, and I'm like, oh, this is fantastic, like this is so great, and I don't know, I just think for a lot of people, and you guys might feel the same way, it's like you just you try more of these lighter bodied like wines where you can really taste where they're coming from, and it's like a revelation. um,
Totally.
Oh,
and
game changer.
Lighter bodied, like this.
yeah, say that I don't like some bolder wines too, but I like tasting the terroir and where they come from, and you can like taste the story of the wine when you're drinking it. Some of these
Yep.
wines out there are just like huge, massive fruit bombs, and you're not really getting to like the heart of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're speaking our language.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Definitely one of us.
Yeah, so it's like a combination of just like the trajectory of tasting all these wines and being like, okay, this is definitely what I gravitate towards. I also was opening an oyster bar, and so our menu is primarily seafood and vegetable oriented, and so it
Wow.
wasn't like the big Napa cabs that went well with the food on our menu. It was the your gammes, and so yeah, it's just that's kind of just how it all happened.
Is that restaurant still there?
Love that.
Oh yeah, it's still there. Yeah, it's a fantastic restaurant, and my business partner was nominated.
What's it called?
It's called Henrietta Red.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, my business partner was nominated last year for Best Chef Southeast for James Beard, and yeah, they're doing. I mean, obviously, everyone's had their challenges during the pandemic, but
Totally. That's so awesome.
Yeah, they're still there doing their thing. So
actually, the wine I'm drinking right now. So Allie, for listeners out there, I think I mentioned this in our very first episode. I kind of got into natural wine from Allie. I started with her in Nashville. Super fun, a long time ago. And actually, this wine was one of my favorites that you introduced me to. I'm drinking the Birichino pet nat here.
Oh, cool.
Lovely, unfiltered, very floral, dry bubbles. So yeah, fun.
I think that one is what, Santa Cruz area?
Monterey, I think.
So they have a tasting room in Santa Cruz, but
you're right. So yeah.
I think it's like Salinas, right?
They have a tasting room in downtown Santa Cruz, but they source their grapes primarily from like the Central Valley and
okay. Valley.
Huh. Yeah. Cool. Have you been there, that tasting room in Santa Cruz?
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's a cute little, like right near downtown Santa Cruz, a little outdoor. Yeah, it's definitely a recommend. Definitely. Santa Cruz is super funky, and like there's no shortage of like great new and like people who have been there for a long time, like natural winemakers. There's a bunch of new great products like Margins coming out of there, and Flores wines, and
yeah, there's a yeah, I love Santa Cruz. We live in Lake Tahoe, but I'm like, if I ever was a gazillionaire, I'd want a house in Santa Cruz too.
Yeah. It's got the beach. It's got the funk. It's got some natural wines. Got some vineyards. Yeah.
What are you sipping on, Allie?
So this is a pet nat from a winery called Jaybricks. So it's a husband and wife duo based out of San Diego. They're grapes from San Diego County, and they also get some from Santa Barbara, and might be a few other places, but this is really cool. It's a Riesling pet nat, and they named it, I can't pronounce the name, it's like Colom. They named their wines Latin names from this particular vineyard, but it means goblin, and they call because they call Riesling like little goblin.
Yeah. I mean, it can be punchy, it can be sweet, it can be dry, it can be zippy. I mean, it's a little goblin. You never. It's like
It's a little shifty grape.
so.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more, because I have some family that hear Riesling and they're like, "Oh, no, ungodly sweet, can't." And I'm like, oh, "But wait." So tell us about the little goblin. What's it tasting like?
I love Riesling, and it is a very big misconception that Riesling is only sweet. Um, Sweet Riesling is great. I mean, there's some,
Yeah.
I mean, with all varietals, there's some not great stuff, but it's fantastic, sweet, but there's also so much of it that's dry. So it's just kind of a misconception that it's only sweet wine.
Give us the.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, give us because you're like opened up a restaurant. I'm sure you have great food pairings. Give us the dry Riesling and the sweet Riesling like food pairing that comes to mind.
Well, I mean, Riesling with like a cheese plate is always really fantastic. Something creamy.
Yeah.
So for sweet, yeah, like we were just in Sonoma, and for dessert, I got the cheese and Riesling pairing, and it was so good.
Wow.
I
So
love it.
European.
Yeah. And then,
Plate can be dinner, as I argue all the time with Mark, my husband.
And dessert and a starter.
Cheese plate can be starter, dinner, and dessert.
100%. Yeah, and then so Riesling really, it's got a really pronounced acidity. Specifically German Riesling, like comes high altitudes. It's got this incredible acidity. Sometimes like a petrol, oftentimes really like a petrol kind of flavor to it. This has that. It's very on varietal in terms of the flavor profile. But yeah, dry Riesling, kind of like Gruner's and things too. It can go with it's a great food wine because of that acidity. It makes your mouth water. So yeah, I mean, like spicy foods, Riesling's actually great with spicier foods. It's great with like Asian foods and things that have a little bit more of like a really pronounced flavor profile. So yeah, I love Riesling, and everyone else love it too. It's good.
That's a great point. Spicy ethnic food, or maybe even Nashville hot chicken sandwich. Riesling,
yeah, or like what grows together goes together, like some sausage and
Yeah.
So.
There we
I
go.
love that. What grows together goes together. So, all right. So you were in Nashville, but now you are in Lake Tahoe,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And so tell us what you are up to now in your exciting new business venture.
Yeah. So my husband and I moved out here a little over a year ago before like the pandemic, which was kind of crazy. And I've been doing restaurant consulting primarily, but we really always wanted to open up a distribution business, an import and distribution business. And Reno, so we live in Lake Tahoe on the north side of the lake. It's on the Nevada side of the lake. And Reno is kind of the biggest area next to us. Carson City is right near us too, and it has the capital. It is the capital. And there's a lot of tech companies coming to the area. And because of COVID, there's been a lot of folks moving from the Bay Area. So people who kind of are used to drinking, some of these wine bars that maybe have a little bit more of a variety. And so there's really a demand for kind of more low intervention wines and artisanal and smaller production wines. And so we kind of just saw like an opportunity. There's a lot of importers and wineries here that I really love that I worked with in Nashville, and they weren't represented, and we're like, let's do it. Let's bring them to our community. So yeah, we're really excited about it.
And it's called, what's it called?
So it's called Balin Beverage Co. Balin Beverage.
Nice. Balin Beverage Co. And you have both your importing and your distribution license, and distribution for Nevada.
Yeah. So as of now, Nevada, we want to get our license for California because if you've been to Lake Tahoe before, it's kind of split down the middle between the Nevada and California side of the lake.
One foot in each state.
Yeah. And there's South Lake Tahoe, which is probably the biggest community on the lake, is primarily California. And this little area called Truckee, which has a lot of great restaurants, is California too. So we want to get our California license eventually too, and we'll sell on both sides.
Nice.
That's
So exciting.
that's amazing. Like from the little wine knowledge and little time thinking about a possible career in the industry, the thing that jumps out at me is having my own importing company. That sounds like a dream. And maybe you can talk about it a little bit more. It's probably not this this Disney fantasy I've dreamt up in my head of traveling the world and forming relationships with wonderful winemakers who like take care of their land and like would love to get their product into the United States and then representing them and then distributing it. It sounds too real to be true, or is it? Tell us a little bit about your experience this far.
Yeah, I mean, I think with anything, it's there's like wonderful sides to it, and also there's a lot of not negative necessarily, but just like challenges to overcome. For instance, right now, a lot of the importers that we're working with are dealing with like crazy lags in shipping. So, I mean, that's, I'm sure, just a big headache for them in terms of getting the product to their clients.
Yeah.
To start these businesses is a lot of effort and a lot of work. Alcohol is obviously heavily regulated, and cities, states, the country, they want to get their piece of the pie from it. And so it's taxed heavily. For us, in terms of getting our license, I had to apply for a license to distribute in every single county in the area. I had to apply for a federal permit to distribute import, and then I have to apply for my state permit to do the same. Within the county, I live in Washoe County, which includes Reno. It actually stretches all the way to Idaho. It's a massive county.
Wow.
And I had to get a license in Washoe County, so Reno specifically. Then I had to get a license in unincorporated Washoe, which is where I live in Lake Tahoe. And then I had to get another license for another area of Washoe County called Sparks. And then I had to get a license for Carson City. I have to get a license I don't know if I have to get one for Douglas County. I'm still like working. I've gotten mixed information about that. Anyway, it's a lot of effort, and the paperwork is not straightforward. These people, at the county and the state probably want to murder me, because every day I'm like, what about this? How do I fill out? Because if you mess it up, like you're screwed. It's like a big deal. There's a lot of regulation, like I had to put up, you have to get a, what's it called? It's like $50,000 that you have to have. You can get it's a surety bond. I got a surety bond so that I could, if you don't pay your taxes, if you don't give whoever else, the state, the county,
cuts
your pie, then they're going to take it from you, however which way they can. And then you like won't be able to distribute again. You get your license taken away. It's like,
my word.
There's a lot of bureaucracy.
Sounds like a hot mess.
What's been, so if you just had to get an importing license or a distribution for your area of Northern Nevada, what's easier?
It's honestly not hard to get. It's the same process to get both. So it's not, maybe there's like a little bit more paperwork because of the distribution or the import license, but it's if you're going to get a distribution license, I don't see really the big.
You might as well
get the import license. I think personally, we're direct importing some wines through a company called Pax Wine Co. To the United States. So we had to get an import permit to do that. The thing about importing, and I'll say this, is especially, I mean, I'm sure there are a ton of wonderful wineries still out there that have yet to be discovered or just starting and are going to be fantastic. And so, I never want to discourage anyone from going into importing, but a lot of that market has been tapped. Like,
Gobbled up.
especially in places like Europe, like a lot of that market has been gobbled up. But there's folks who are importing a lot of really wonderful wines. Tess Bryant, who we're working with, is importing wines from Australia, really great wines from Australia. There's the new world there's still opportunity.
A lot of Chilean wines I've been seeing all over the place. And
Argentine, South African, there's even in the United States, there's
some Mexico, but I'd like to see more.
Yeah, we went to Mexico City for my 30th birthday, and we're only gonna drink Mexican wine, and they're fantastic, so great. Like there's cool people doing cool stuff all over.
Just got to discover them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like kind of the romantic side of it, is like you think you're gonna go out and you're gonna find these people, and like you may, and then you might have like the best day of your life where you're drinking these incredible wines, and then like they're making you the best meal, the homemade meal you've ever had, and like that stuff's really cool. And I feel like the passionate folks in the wine industry are very giving, and like it's just an infectious energy. So when you encounter those people, it's just like so cool. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
Well, I guess now I'm curious, like, how do you and Nick with Balin Beverage Co. like curate your winemakers? Like, what goes into just like figuring out what wines you want to represent, what you want to be like a part of your portfolio?
Yeah, so I mean, we had kind of a like ethos from the beginning. Like, we're only going to sell things that we really enjoy drinking, that we're passionate about. For me, it's like I'm not that person who can just bullshit my way through stuff. Like, it would be very disingenuous for me to try to sell something that I didn't personally enjoy. So
Totally.
so like so basically, luckily for my relationship with a lot of folks at my restaurant in Nashville, I was already familiar with a lot of these importers and winemakers that I knew I wanted to work with. Birichino is a perfect example. I sold the shit out of that pet nat in Nashville. I loved it.
You sold me.
So when I'm like thinking about who do we want to work with, we made a list, and luckily in the northern Nevada, so there's two things to consider. In Nevada in general, it is technically a franchise state, but you can work with different distributors. So for instance, I'm working with a lot of folks who are represented in Vegas, but I'm going to work with them in northern Nevada.
Gotcha.
But people who are already represented in northern Nevada, like, you don't want to be the asshole who steps on toes. So there is already some folks I would have liked to have worked with that are already represented here. So those folks are off the table. But there was a ton of other people that weren't represented. So we just made a list, like, what are the importers that we worked with in Nashville? Who are the wineries that we've worked with, or we've had their wines out to a meal, or when we were traveling, and we love. And so we really just like reached out to everyone. And if we didn't personally know them, then some of the distributors in Nashville are very good friends of mine, and they were already representing them. So they sent intro emails so that we weren't like the random people from Tahoe, So that's how we developed our list. And it just so happens that most of the people, the importers, the wine that we're selling happens to be low intervention and sustainably, made, farmed wines.
Nice.
That's super.
I'm sure all the wines and winemakers in your portfolios are your babies, so we love them all equally. But tell us one, or tell us about one that maybe you're excited about that you just like put in your portfolio recently, or a longstanding winemaker or somebody like that our listeners need to know about.
Yeah. So one that I actually never had worked with before, because they came to Nashville after I'd left, is this company called Eclecticon, and they import Greek natural wines from Greece. The gentleman who started it, his name is Aris, and he's super cool and very, very passionate. And he's basically like you know, expanded the natural wine movement in Greece and has kind of like turned some of these farmers onto, you know, farmers, winemakers onto doing things sustainably and naturally. And so I'm super excited about his wines, and I'm like gonna spread the gospel of the natural Greek wines.
I love that.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was really cool. We're working, Paris Wine Company is one that I mentioned, and they basically, they're based out of Paris, and they work with a bunch of different winemakers there, and we're gonna import the wines from them, and they just work with like the wines we've, you know, had from them are just so good, like so
Yeah.
Vintage 59 is a winemaker that I worked with when I was in Nashville and loved their wines there, and I'm so excited to work with them here. Bomba
Where's Vintage 59? Are they making wine in Tennessee?
So they're an importer, and they
Mm.
primarily from France. They have like, I think I kept 2 bottles on my list the whole time that the restaurant was open, and one of them was their Gilbert Chablis. It was like the best Chablis ever, and
Perfect seafood wine.
yeah. And they just have an incredible portfolio. Tess Bryant, I'm really excited about. We just were in Sonoma and added on a few more winemakers to the list of folks we're representing. One of them is this guy named Ryan Pass. He's the winemaker at Farella.
Yeah,
You know
Pax
him?
Wines.
Pass, P-A-S-S.
Oh, never mind. Well, look up Pax Wines as well. See if PAX, I think he's in Sonoma. He has a tasting room in Sebastopol.
Oh, cool.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but tell us about Pass.
Yeah, so this guy's in Napa, and I'm, you know, I will never say like I'll never drink Napa wines, or I'll never drink, you know, like that's
Totally
ridiculous, because there's good wines everywhere, and it's absurd to like say, you know, something's like not. But you know, I generally don't gravitate towards those wines, is what I'll say, and so
warmer growing region.
yeah, they're just very big, bold wines, and
Punch you in the face.
yeah, fruit bombs, and not all of them, 100% not all of them, but anyway, so Ryan and Farella are like fighting the good. Farella's been around and has been fighting the good fight for a long time, and Ryan is the winemaker there, but he's also started his own project, and it's like I'm tasting Chardonnay from Napa, and I'm obsessed with it, and I never thought I would say that really, but it's
wow. And
he harvests early, they pick early, and so the wines are just like bright, and it's an elegant, and
probably not aged heavily with oak, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, I don't think any of his he might do a little bit, but no, it's primarily no, primarily not. And
which is hard because I sold oak barrels to wineries for 2 years of my life. So I was like on the train, in love with it. And then when I stepped back and ended that job and really got into naturals, tell us why maybe you prefer, like I like a little oak once in a while, but tell us maybe why, or maybe you don't. Tell us about your preference on oak.
I mean, I think that I'm not anti-oak. I just think that it oftentimes masks a lot of other the flavor, like the terroir. I hate, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know when I say this, I feel
I would
like
agree.
But it just like I like wines that I'm transported to a place, and I'm like I taste it, and I'm like I'm here, I'm in this vineyard, like I can feel the air, you know, like I can feel the salt.
Totally.
And I think when you heavily oak things, that it can kind of take away from that. But there's times where if you oak things, it can enhance those. And so, you know,
there's a tasteful way to do it without making it overpowering.
Yeah, and it just depends on the grape. It depends on the vintage. Like it depends, you know, like depends what happened that year, and like how the grapes, what they're tasting like what's going on, you know. So yeah, it's I'm not anti it, but I don't drink like a lot of super oaky wines, you know.
No,
yeah,
I totally agree. I love what you're saying. I feel like it just can it has to be done delicately, or it just so distracts from the story, like kind of what you were saying. You want to feel like you're transported. And I'm the same way. Like when I have a sip of my wine, I'm like, ooh, what's the story here? Like what's this like thing that's happening? And I think sometimes it's like, oh, okay, cool.
A lot of times you're transported to American
no,
oak,
girl.
American oak, vanilla,
Yep.
coconut caramel,
You're in a little oak barrel somewhere. Yeah.
which is hard. I loved oak for so long.
I didn't know that about you, Remington. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I sold primarily to distilleries and then some wineries.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, they're also making really cool Merlots, and I like hate when people like say, "Oh, I don't drink Merlot," like the sideways thing.
Yeah,
I hate that. Merlot. There's so much good Merlot out there, and
Are you talking about Pass again? Pass Winery?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you talking about Pass Winery again?
Yeah, he's
cool.
Yeah, and I think Farella does one too. I think they grow Merlot, and yeah, they're just like, I think for Pass's Merlot he does carbonic, so it's like really juicy. I'm
cool.
so into the juicy, chillable red right now. I'm
totally. And with summer coming up, I know we don't have a ton of time left, but you're hitting on all these amazing terms, and we kind of covered some in the past, but give us the carbonic lowdown real quick.
Yeah, so carbonic maceration is basic. I'm looking at your Gamay shirt, and it's something that they do often in Beaujolais, but it's basically when fermentation happens inside of the grape, and it produces these. It just makes it like juicier, and it just makes it. That term like glue, a little bit more like gluey, and
softer tannins.
Totally.
Very juicy. And which might be kind of nice expression on a Merlot from like a warm climate like Napa. That'd be really interesting to taste. That'd be like the exact opposite of what our parents were drinking through the 80s and 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Dying to try it.
Yeah, for sure. No.
So we only have a couple minutes left, and I just really want to make sure that we get to shout you out, Allie, and shout out Balin Beverage Co. So like, how can we and our listeners and viewers support you guys best right now?
I don't, it's so, with distribution, it's so hard because it's like a very community based.
Totally.
So if you're a restaurant owner or a retailer of any sort in Nevada, in northern Nevada right now, then hit us up. We've got wine to sell when our licensing is supposed to come through in a few weeks. So once that happens, we're ready to go.
Nice.
Amazing.
And it's kind of like hit or miss with how often the distribution stamp or sticker like makes it onto the wine. Yeah. Is that your choice? Do you have that choice?
Yeah. So for imports, it depends. Like if you direct import something, then I think it always, you have the option. We're right now we're just direct importing from Paris Wine Co, and they've become a pretty relatively recognizable brand in the community, and so like it benefits us technically to have that. So like we don't care about.
I love it.
I don't know.
We're coming down to seconds, Remington. We're coming down to seconds here, so I want to make sure that we can do a good sign off. So yes, please support Balin Beverage Co. Allie is amazing. Her husband is so amazing. They have a website. It's balinbeverageco.com. They're on Instagram. And Allie, thank you so much for being with us. You are just like a wealth of knowledge, and I just like love your approach and passion for wine, and I love you.
I know. I want you on more often.
I know. I'm sorry that we're counting down here, but thank you again. You're amazing, and let's do this soon.
Yay!
All right, here.
All right.
We need another cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, fam. All right. Thanks for coming on, Allie.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Allie. You're the best.
Cheers. Go Natty or go home. Peace out.